It was a week before the wedding. I was feeling badly about this. I knew at some point it became clear I needed to disclose this to her. I didn't want the marriage to be invalid. She needed the chance to make an informed decision as to whether to still marry me or not. So I told her, and I saw how much this devastated her. And I mean, it really, really hurt her. And I saw that, and that was enough for me to say, okay, no more, never again. I reinstalled Covenant Eyes on all my devices. And to this day, that was about 3.5 years ago, coming on 4 years now. And I've been sober ever since.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast Tell Them For Me by Road to Purity. We have a special guest this week, Theo McManigle from Covenant Eyes. Theo, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan and David, for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys and to be working with you guys more and more.
Awesome. So Theo is the Catholic Church Outreach Specialist at Covenant Eyes. But before we dive all the way into that, Theo, can you help in your own words? I think Covenant Eyes is pretty popular. It's a pretty big organization, I think. Been around for a long time, at least in my eyes. But in case anybody out there doesn't know what it is, can you just give a brief rundown of what is Covenant Eyes?
Absolutely. Covenant Eyes. And actually, so we've been around 25 years. So you're right. I would say that's a pretty long time. Covenant Eyes is an internet service that provides that's mission is to help people stop using pornography or never start. And the way we do this is through our accountability and filtering service. And no, we're not just another filter, but we provide accountability. And so how it works is if I'm struggling with pornography and I need someone to be my accountability partner or ally, we use those terms kind of interchangeably, and I ask you guys, you can have more than one. Then what would happen is I would download Covenant Eyes on all of my devices, my laptop, my computer, my phone, my tablet, and I would I would have it installed on all my devices, and then you guys would be registered as my accountability partners. And so then, as my accountability partners, you would have access to my internet activity. Covenant Eyes monitors your internet activity through our screen accountability AI technology. And it takes regular screenshots, not invasive screenshots. Like if you take a screenshot on your phone, it flashes. It's not flashing all the time, but it is taking regular screenshots. And it's using the AI technology to monitor, okay, is this pornography? Is this potentially pornography? Is this explicit in any way? And so you would be able to access my internet activity at any time, but you would also be able to receive an email at a frequency of our agreement every day, every week, whatever the agreement is. And, you'd be able to give me encouragement or, it'll let you know very quickly if anything is explicit or potentially explicit. And then you guys would be able to reach out and we have a conversation that we can have. So the beauty of Covenant Eyes for the person who is struggling with pornography is that someone who's struggling with pornography, as you guys know, is in a place of shame and secrecy because of this sin of pornography. But the shame and the secrecy lead to further acting out. It becomes a vicious cycle. If you can bring somebody into that struggle who can see what you're doing and can see what you're doing apart from your willingness to be honest, right? Because it's just there. That does two things. Number one, it begins to shed light on what you're doing and chip away at that vicious cycle. Number two, even if you fall early on, especially, and that person, your accountability partner, your ally, your friend, whoever it is, sees that you fell, loves you anyway, and continues to call you up and call you forward, it can begin to chip away at some of the lies that you believe about yourself, that I'm no good and how could anybody ever love me, etc.
Yeah.
So that's really the power of Covenant Eyes, that it's there on your computer and your technology, holding you accountable, but also bringing light into your life and into this struggle and helping you connect with others. Your accountability partner doesn't necessarily have to be a peer, but maybe it could be your priest or your therapist or your coach or your dad or your older brother or somebody who's in a mentor type role, but it could also be a peer, a brother, a friend, whatever the case is. So that's my summary of Covenant Eyes. And then along with the software itself, we also have a lot of free programs and resources, ebooks, our Strive program for men, our Arise program for women, our our restored program, vows program for married couples. Those are like video-based courses with some readings. Arise and Strive are for our digital communities as well. So we have a lot that we provide for the struggler with pornography.
Awesome. Yeah, accountability is a big thing that we talk about a lot, and I like that in our program we have a whole chapter just on pornography. And I think what's helpful that we've seen is, I think, having that automatic piece to it, because I think a lot of guys or women, when you do fall, you may not want to reach out. Like, it's important for us with having a really good accountability partner is not just, oh, just reach out when you have a problem. And then it's like, well, if you don't set a plan to reach out regularly, or if you don't set a plan to do things consistently and have structure to your accountability, when you do have a problem, you feel ashamed and you feel really down on yourself, and you're like, I don't really want to reach out right now. Like, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, whatever it may be. So having that agreement in advance to be able to get reports, and then if I'm your accountability partner, can see that come in and see what's going on, and then I can reach out. And like you said, I love that concept of now those lies that I'm telling myself that I'm not wanted, I'm not worth anything. But then here's this person reaching out to me when they see I'm struggling, without me even having to do anything, because of our Covenant Eyes setup, is awesome.
One thing I forgot to mention too, and I feel like I typically forget to mention this now, but it just occurred to me. It also lets the accountability partner know if you attempt to uninstall the service.
Really? Oh, that's
devices.
helpful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. To get around it. Right. It'll tell the ally right away, hey, so this Theo just generated an install code. Reach out to him.
Yeah. And I am the
Go ahead.
I'm the accountability partner for several other individuals, and you get notified if they go to incognito mode or something like that as well. If you know they're trying to hide their activity, you get notified.
We have made a lot of advances in the 25 years that we've been around, and not only, by the way, does your subscription get you the accountability and filtering service, but we've created also this website, or for mobile devices, app called Victory, that also provides a lot of educational content, 40 or so different self-paced courses that you can do that are, kind of different topics. Some are more geared for men, women. There's even a course for pastors. But also it's kind of a recovery experience that you are led along a journey with. So every day it'll reach out and say, okay, did you keep your commitment to be sober today? And if you say I fell, it'll ask you some questions like, what was your trigger? What happened? What led to just a number of things like that. So it's also very interactive. So those are some of the things that we've added over the years, and we've found that to be a great enhancement to the experience.
Yeah, it's awesome that that's built in. I mean, that's a lot of the stuff that we teach in our programs too. Understanding, we talk about boundaries and stuff, but understanding your triggers and those kinds of things, super helpful.
Looking deeper into when you fell as to why.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's good to make sure that you have the right person to reach out to. Whether to be your accountability partner or piece the person connected. I think I heard once in a group that I was in of somebody who was like, you know what? I'm so fed up with this. I'm going to set up Covenant Eyes myself, and I'm just going to set it up so that it sends emails to my mom, and then I'm just never going to do it again because that's terrifying. And I was like, I don't know if I'd recommend that, but that's what.
Well, actually,
I don't know if I'd recommend it either.
Yeah, and all the experience that I've had with people, I think the number one most powerful aspect of it, even though there's a ton of features and a ton of things with it, the number one most powerful aspect of it is knowing if I look, somebody else will know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. That's number one. Everything else is important and add on, but that one feature is the most powerful of all of it.
If all you have is a filter, it's still kind of gives the illusion of it being between you, right? You can work around it.
Right,
Nobody has to know. But with this, somebody's going to know.
Yep. Well, that's Satan's biggest lie with so many things, but especially with this particular struggle, is that you're the only one. You tend to get in your own head, like, nobody else is struggling with this the way that I am. All those lies that you tell yourself that Satan likes to keep it. He likes to keep everything secret. And when it's secret, he's in control. So when you can have that exposure and that transparency, That's part of why confession is so great. But yeah, in this way too, with an accountability partner and stuff like that, I think that's absolutely right. It makes it known, and that's super powerful for sure.
Well, and for Catholics, confession is obviously it's so important. It is the way your sins are forgiven. You are made right with God. But for someone who falls into the addiction cycle, confession can become a part of the cycle, a part of the ritual that you do. It's just the part at the end that you do to make yourself feel better. You guys have some great, stuff for priests in the confessional to, make it more effective. But if all you're getting is your, two Our Fathers and two Hail Marys or whatever it is afterwards, I mean, you're going to be back. So I think it's great that what organizations like you guys are doing to help priests really be like, you have a huge opportunity here to really help the guy or the woman.
Yeah. That's what our clergy program's all about.
But at the end of the day, yes, exactly. So what we're realizing more and more is that, confession is so important. It is enough to get you right with God, but it is not enough to stop this problem if you are caught in it. You're going to have it outside because it's affecting your life outside of it, even if only by omission, right? That's time you're not spending doing something else. But obviously it's affecting you more and more. It's affecting your brain. It's affecting the way you look at other people. It's affecting the way you, your relationship to the devices themselves. It's affecting your sexual wellness and you're sinning, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super quick plug for anybody, because I don't know if we talked about it too much. For anybody who may not know, we have a whole program designed for priests on how to address sexual sin in the confessional. It's part of our CFET program, or Clergy Formation Enhancement Program. We've got more coming out. If you're a priest who happens to be watching this, or if you want to share this with your priest, just go to roadtopurity.com/clergy. You can find all the tools about it, or clergy.roadtopurity.com to sign up. But in that space, I want to talk about something else, actually. So, Covenant Eyes traditionally, and I think this was new to me until somewhat recently, within the last year or so, right before we met you, traditionally very, very publicly popular Christian organization. But now there's a whole Catholic element to it. You are the Catholic Church outreach specialist at Covenant Eyes. What does that mean exactly? How is Covenant Eyes able to serve the Catholic Church more? And can you expand more on what your role is there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Covenant Eyes was founded by Ronald DeHaas, who a wonderful Presbyterian man who wanted to protect his children from the issue of pornography, and so he recruited an IT guy at his church to come up with kind of this software in its infancy, and he was able to protect his kids, but then he realized oh, hey, I can make a product out of this. And 25 years later, it continues to be very successful. So Covenant Eyes in its founding is a Christian organization, primarily Protestant. And at some point they realized they need to have a Catholic element, because obviously the Catholic Church needs this. And so it happened, and they brought on some wonderful people who have worked very hard to make this more known in the Catholic space. So I definitely owe it to people like Matt Fradd, Ryan Foley, Amanda Zerfis, my predecessor, Brendan Clark, but also my boss, Karen Potter, who herself is not Catholic, but she did a lot to expand our Catholic outreach, and she was very, very intentional about that. And we've been able to make a lot of, headway. Granted, when we go to conferences, we're probably still more popular in the Protestant space, but we're getting more and more popular in the Catholic space. And, other guys like yourselves, but even some of the more general, kind of chastity organizations, speakers, Christopher West, Jason Everett, have bought in, and they like us too. So we're definitely growing a lot. And we have resources like you guys, not necessarily to the educational extent as you guys, but we have things that we give to priests for the confessional. We have a movement that we encourage dioceses and parishes to jump on board with, called our Safe Haven Sunday program, where the diocese or parish or eparchy that agrees to take it on will agree to set one Sunday aside in the liturgical calendar to preach about the issue, to hand out some of our booklets. Mostly those booklets are for parents to be able to protect and talk with their children about this. although one of the years is dedicated to the adult programs. But I digress. The priest will preach about it a little bit in the homily, hand out our booklets, pray the mass or the liturgy for the intention of purity and chastity and protection of our children from pornography. And at least if they hear about it once a year, I mean, for a number of years, that's pretty good. Of all the issues there are to try and incorporate, not to mention the gospel itself, we think that's pretty good. And then, with some making them aware of some of our other programs, then they have at least something else they can hand somebody in the confessional. So, that's a big part of our outreach right now. And yes, in my role, I'm really doing what I can to try and expand that. So this idea of church outreach. So I have a colleague who works primarily with the Protestant churches, and then I work primarily with the Catholic Church. And together we're able to reach the whole body of Christ and fulfill our goal of reaching Christians in the USA.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that Safe Haven Sunday makes a lot of sense. We encounter people all the time who, priests who tell us, or even individuals who don't know that pornography is a sin. Surprisingly, and it's not talked about. And it's, of course, like a lot of people, depending on how you grew up, if you're a cradle Catholic or not, and a lot of different avenues. If all you've ever done is go to church on Sunday and you really haven't had much other catechesis, why would you know? Because they don't typically talk about it. So it's awesome. At least once a year, you typically hit a lot of people and help bring that exposure to the awareness of the harms of pornography and all of that kind of stuff. That plays really well into something that I don't know if we're allowed to mention, but I hope we can work together with Covenant Eyes on another portion of our clergy program and what we're doing to be able to talk more about purity at the pulpit and how to relate it to the scriptures and make it more accessible to priests who've told us they're not sure how to talk about it throughout the year. And I think it totally plays into that. And so I hope we can do a lot with that together.
Let's jump into just another thing that is difficult to talk about. So I imagine there's a lot of initiatives, and I've even heard this, that there's a lot of initiatives that want the priests to preach about this to some degree, right? And there's a lot of important things that our Catholic Church teaches about from both the kind of individual moral, ethical perspective, as well as the social justice perspective. There's so much that needs to be incorporated, right? People need to be told that you need to give to the poor. They need to be told to spend time in prayer. They need to be told about the social teachings of the church. You need to, and yes, there needs to be some formation about things like immigration and, what a just society looks like and family life. But when you look at the confessional, what is coming up? Pornography, right? I mean, they say it's the most confessed sin. So, if you are preaching, it probably makes some sense to weigh, okay, what am I hearing most about when I'm with individuals one-on-one?
Right.
Okay. So what is, no pun intended, the masses need to hear about when I'm speaking to them publicly. So it probably even deserves a little more than once a year, at least to be spoken about publicly inside or outside of the liturgy. But still, right, if you're hearing about it in confession this often, proportionally speaking, then it deserves public addressing. And there's multiple ways to do that, right? The homily, talks outside of Mass, the bulletin, the website, all that stuff.
All those
but
things.
As long as you do it.
Right. And we have, that's what we're working on to help, very frequently bring some of this topic, even if it's not necessarily pornography, but the idea of moral sexuality and chastity, as a blended into the homilies that are more easier to hear for more of the parish. But we also offer a lot of things for the churches. We have a chastity corner that they can put, every week, something different in their bulletins. We have other products that we have available for them as well to help expand this. And, and as you said, as David said, that how many people we run into who aren't even aware that pornography is a sin, much less a serious sin. And if they don't know that, how many people are not in line at the confessional? There's already so many at the line at the confessional now. How many aren't even going?
Right.
Well, and the other thing is, how many parents aren't going because they were not proactive in protecting their children about this, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
obviously, if they didn't know they need to be, did they commit mortal sin in that regard? Well, no, I'm not subject, but that is an omission that is having consequences. And that's another part of our, Safe Haven Sunday call to action, right? Not merely you who are doing this need to go to confession,
Right.
but more so like, hey, parents, hey, adults,
Yeah.
the next generation's coming up. Technology is more involved. You need to be
Well, and
prepared.
that's all the more reason to talk about it. I think you made a really good point. It's like weighing what we're talking about as far as what priests say is so often confessed, and then what they're preaching about. And the ratio there seems out of balance, right? If pornography and sexual sins are so heavily in the confessional and they're almost never talked about at the pulpit, and I think it goes even deeper than just pornography, right? I think it goes to the foundation of everything, and I would think it would make sense to talk more at the pulpit because from our perspective, right, and even from, to a certain degree, you could argue Satan's perspective, the family is the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
And in a way, we like to say that the foundation of the family is sexuality, right? That's how you grow a family, is through holy sex and being able to share in God's creation and the beauty of that and the way that models the Trinity. And you could go on and on about how incredible and sacred that is and all that kind of stuff. And that is the foundation of the family and the foundation of everything. And Satan hates that, right? We know that. And he attacks it so heavily. And that goes beyond, like, if you ever get into anything related to proper and holy sexuality, it's about more than just the physical act. And it's about more than just, oh, I don't look at porn or I don't have sex with other people. But there's so much more to the beauty and intimacy of proper love and what purity really means and chastity. And all of those themes could easily be talked about way more often. And I think those are all of that is kind of at the root of this issue to a degree, that is just never talked about on Sundays at all. That can easily lead into then, okay, if I'm understanding what proper sexuality is, what proper intimacy is, then I recognize that pornography is a sin innately without even having someone to tell me that. And that could easily be talked about, again, like you said, way more than once a year. Which is something that, again, that we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what the purpose behind our Power of the Pulpit program is.
Yeah.
Under our clergy formation is that. And I was going to add one thing too. We've done surveys to hundreds of priests on this issue and the discussion of why they don't talk about it. And it's a large percentage of them will talk about pushback. They'll talk about the mom of the 10-year-old or 12-year-old who says, why would you say these kinds of things? And now I've got to explain it to my kid and, whatever. But, and not that this is something, that's always the case, but there's one specific example that I know personally of a parent who had a 12-year-old daughter who said, well, she's innocent. I wouldn't talk about this stuff with her because I don't want to contaminate her. I don't want to introduce her to these topics. She's just innocent. She doesn't know about this stuff. I happen to know for a fact through other circles that she knew about this stuff and was engaged in it. It's like, your daughter knows more than you do, but you think she knows nothing.
I mean,
that is a common
you're in a mountain, in a remote cabin in the woods, and you don't have internet and you don't know other people, your kids are going to be exposed in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. It's really hard to completely avoid.
It's not if, but when.
Yeah, typically. Yeah.
And for me, that brings up two things. Number one, Jesus, his followers, and the people he was speaking to did not have the internet, and yet he still said, whoever one of you looks at a woman with lust commits adultery in your heart. Yeah. So that is still foundational to our leanings due to original sin and what we need to know and hear. Number one. Number two, we hear that all the time at Covenant Eyes. Oh, like, how do we talk about this with children around? We don't want to ruin their innocence. Oh, now I have to explain it to my kid. Yes, you do. And not just now. You need to do it yesterday. Right? Like that's exactly the conversation that Safe Haven Sunday, that preaching about this is meant to spur, actually, in a prudent way, of course. But and here's the other thing too, and this could get into this could kind of help us lead into something else that we wanted to talk about. But maybe you're right, parent, insofar as my kid would not be inclined to this. Maybe you're right. But what happens when they're shown it on accident? What happens when they stumble across it? who they are will change. That's what happened to me. And I can elaborate on that.
That was actually going to be my next question: is what brought you to Covenant Eyes, and if you could share more of your background. You're right on track. Go for it.
I grew up in a good Catholic family. My parents, wonderful people. I've always had a strong trust in both of them. So the fact that I had a pornography issue, my, acting out wasn't due to some kind of parent wound. It wasn't. But I nonetheless, grew up in Catholic education my whole life. I even went to seminary right after high school. I spent a long time, 8 years, college seminary, major seminary. I ended up leaving, meeting the woman who is now my wife. And we have a daughter, and we live here in Chicago. But I, in a way that came across pornography at the age of 17 years old on TV, on one of those HBO kind of things. I don't even know if they do that there anymore, thankfully, but at the time they did. And I didn't know that that's what it was, because there were some restrictions. It said like blocked title. I thought, I was up late watching TV, but I wasn't looking for that. But I went on it, and that's what it was, and that's what I saw. And like I said, the way I would tell parents about this is who I was changed, not deep down my identity as a son of God, but at some level it changed me. And, I was even able to tell my dad about it, but I still found myself going back. And that was a pattern. And eventually it went to the internet. And that was a pattern that lasted for about, not a pattern, but that brought me into this struggle for 10 years. And yes, even during my time in seminary. And it wasn't until I left and I, was dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife. I had a period of sobriety, but then I had a relapse for a time. And it was a week before the wedding. I was feeling badly about this. I knew at some point it became clear I needed to disclose this to her. I didn't want the marriage to be invalid. She needed the chance to make an informed decision as to whether to still marry me or not. So I told her, and I saw how much this devastated her. And I mean, it really, really hurt her. And I saw that, and that was enough for me to say, okay, no more, never again. I reinstalled Covenant Eyes on all my devices. And to this day, that was about 3.5 years ago, coming on 4 years now. And I've been sober ever since. So that was enough for me.
Wow.
And I realized that lends credence to the myth that, if I get married, that'll fix me. But the myth in that isn't that marriage can't make us a better person. I mean, traditionally the church has called it a remedy for concupiscence. The myth is that if I do this other thing in my life, then passively I'll just be better. Whether it's I get married, I get ordained, I enter a religious community, I take on this kind of job, then I will be better passively. But I've had to think about this, but what it was is not that I got married so it fixed me. I saw how much it hurt my wife. I made a decision that I would not hurt her in this way. I mean, ideally never again, but I did not want to hurt her in this way. I didn't want to hurt her at all anymore. So that was enough for me to give it up. And I can tell you that, pornography might provide momentary pleasure, but it does not provide satisfaction, as you know well through your own story. Yeah. But I, just to not live a double life, not live in secrecy, not have this weighing on me, not having the shame and the anxiety and all that stuff that can result, life is so much better. And, and grateful. And I'm grateful that she made the decision to, stay with me, to say, okay, that hurt, but we'll get married and we'll go forward. And I really think that saved me too. The fact that she gave me a chance to be better. So, it's a blessing to live in sobriety. And now, so after I left seminary, I worked at a parish for a year, got 1.5 years. And then I went on to teach high school for about 3 years. And then I, came to work at Covenant Eyes. We have a daughter who's 3. We had a son who was at 1.5 years old, unfortunately passed away from cancer. And our marriage has been able to survive that. Losing a child can be one of the big stresses on a marriage. But through not having this in my life and not, and really being intentional about let's make this thing great, we've been able to survive this kind of tragedy. So, it's definitely been a journey, but a wonderful, despite tragedy, a wonderful journey. And not having pornography in my life since being married has been a crucial part of its goodness.
Yeah. Good for you. That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that and for being vulnerable. Yeah, go ahead.
I got to tell you the amount of courage it took to tell your fiance that a week before marriage. The guts it took to do that, knowing the potential repercussions from it, was huge.
But I think that really speaks to the situation that you're in and why you've been able to handle so much. And I'm very sorry to hear about your son.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think it makes sense, if you being the type of man to have that kind of honesty before you get married, even that close, like a week out, knowing that it could just cancel everything, which is super
she could say, never mind.
Super shameful. And, who knows who she's going to tell why she canceled the wedding and why she called it off. And, I can't imagine all the things you probably thought of at that time that could have happened, worst case scenarios, right? And the fallout from that.
Mm-hmm.
So the integrity to do that, and like he said, the courage to do that. So first of all, the type of man you have to be there, and then for her to see that, recognize that, and then still say yes and be trusting in you to work on it, to not continue down that path, already sounds like a recipe for a phenomenal marriage. And just that information alone tells me I'm not surprised at all that you were able to handle such difficult things that God has, put in your path, crosses that you guys have had to bear, and still be faithful and still be going through that. So very impressed.
By the way, I will say too, and this is a bit vulnerable, but at that point when I told her that, we were already expecting our daughter. So she was born 2 months after the marriage. So,
oh, wow.
There was a lot on the line there, and,
Yeah.
that had the potential to blow up everything. But I think this experience has been so formative because I think, oh man, it really stinks to admit this, but I'm in seminary all those years and I can't kick it. And it's like, man, at some deep level, I'm going to confession. I'm praying. I want to be done with it, but I can't help but look back and think that somehow deep down, I felt like it was okay. And I hope I make sense when I say that, because I knew, it's wrong, but I didn't have a really strong sense of this actually has huge consequences until that day I told her. Until that day I came out about it, and that's what I needed to be the kick in the pants, to be like, hey, this matters. This is destructive. This is unfaithful.
And that's another one of the biggest lies, is it's not about you. Right? It's not just about you, and it affects other people, whether you think it does or not. And I could totally see that in seminary. You're thinking, I'm working towards being celibate for the rest of my life. And, not that you're thinking this is good, but you're like, who's this really going to hurt? Or, whatever it may be.
At a subconscious level.
At a subconscious level, yes, not consciously. Absolutely. Good. Thank you for clarifying that. But, the woman looking in her eyes and realizing that the perception that's there and the way that you're treating her by doing this thing, absolutely makes sense.
Yeah, and that brings up the question too of the seminary and their programming. Obviously, they didn't do enough to instill in you how big a deal this was, with that. And then with our seminary we have here, I was brought in for 6 years to do our program with the seminarians, because they knew this was a problem that they weren't addressing appropriately, and to deal with the seminarians who would come forward and say, yeah, I'm stuck on this. And I would work with, up to 25 guys a year sometimes.
I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. Our moral theology teacher did a wonderful job of teaching us about this, but the nature of seminary, as being close to the community there, you can only touch the surface of so many topics, right? Even if you have, I would say, not necessarily big topics like Christology or even sexual morality as a big topic, you have a whole semester on that. but then within those, right, there's pornography, contraception, like sexual morality, pornography, contraception, sex outside of marriage, divorce and remarriage, all that stuff, right? You can only kind of touch the surface of those and give a class period, maybe 2, right? Or Christology, right? The Council of Nicaea, the Council of Ephesus. Like you can only, like I said, a class period, maybe 2, but a class period, maybe 2, for something you might be hearing in the confessional after you get ordained every single day, right. is really not necessarily enough. And then, it was, I had a really good spiritual director at the time, and there was an understanding of like, okay, we struggle with this. We talk about it, but that can almost kind of make it seem a little less of a big deal, right? Because like, how many seminarians struggle with this?
Right.
I don't know. You got a good sense of that, I'm sure, at least at St. John's January. But,
yeah,
it's a lot, right? I mean, you get rid of everybody who's doing it, and there are people who will make the comment like, "Well, you probably won't have any priests," and I'm not recommending that as a solution, but like, it's a big deal, right? So
yeah.
Being engaged and married definitely helped me see how big of a deal this is.
Well, it makes the problem a little bit more tangible, I think, in front of you, and respecting women and all of that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't necessarily say that, like, I don't know if I would have phrased it as the fault or the seminary didn't do a good enough job per se.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I think they probably did the best job that they could. And part of the reason our organization exists to begin with is that so many people we talk to, even priests and higher up in the church, don't really know the best way to address this issue as a whole. And that's exactly why we do what we do. He's done 6 years at seminary and stuff like that. And that's exactly what we want to help with more and more seminaries if we can, is because they don't necessarily have the tools to do it the way that makes the most sense.
And to rightly further address that too is while I made the comment, it wasn't to say that they did a bad job overall.
Right, yes. Definitely not.
They could not address this topic.
Yeah.
I approached our seminary and said, "Hey, we need to do this. This is a big deal. We need to address this." And they say, "There's no way we can pack more into this." And that's why they brought me in separately to do this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, with that said, they did what they needed to address this effectively, and at the same time, now, and as I could see this throughout the semester years and so forth with these, I saw many of these men in their wounds and why they were struggling, what's going on, and so forth. They will become priests who are able to personally handle this issue in a way that could never be taught.
Yep.
Because they went through it and they were guided through it and they were looked at their wounds.
So now when their parishioners are struggling.
Yeah. Right. So now they can handle this, which is over half their parish is probably engaged in some way in this. They know how to address this.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's a great example of how our woundedness can become gift, but it's I think even both for the seminarian and for the already ordained priest, like to have to come forward and get help is really can be a scary a scary thought, because in a way beyond like, oh, maybe I have my guys I talk to about this, or maybe I have my spiritual director, but to have to public or in the external forum, let's say, come forward and say something is scary, right? Because that's where you live. That's your identity. That's that's your livelihood. And the thought of having to, have it necessarily not be responded to the right way, or maybe have to get treatment that's a bit excessive, or at least even having to take a break from seminary or the ministry, or give it up altogether. That's a scary process, right? So I get it. I get it. It's hard to come forward in that environment. But having to face down consequences and get deep in your bones a real sense of this matters, and I need to be a person who lives in integrity and not do this, not for the sake of, by the way, not for the sake, I was thinking about this, of my potential ordination or my marriage or what have you, but for the sake of your baptism, your salvation, and your holiness. That's what you really have to consider. And if delaying those things is what it takes, but you're in heaven when it's all over.
So switching gears for a moment, a
Yeah.
little bit, or maybe backtracking, I guess, to the start, you were kind of sharing your personal experience and how you came out of things right before you got married and
Hmm.
making that decision. I was curious if you are able to, if you're open to expanding on, and if not, that's okay. But you mentioned, so we often find a lot of times like there's typically something underlying, some kind of pain, woundedness, or something that's motivating you to seek out intimacy in a false way through pornography or a lot of various things. You were very clear that your parents were phenomenal and you don't believe any of this was coming from kind of any parental wounds or things like that. I'm curious, did you end up finding something else, or was it just the stark contrast of how it's hurting your future spouse at the time, that really broke you out of it? Or did you find anything deeper that maybe wasn't from your parents that was still influencing your desire, your craving, your corrupt desire that Satan was influencing to be tempted towards pornography?
That's a good question. Um, Here's what I can tell you for sure. It was a great means of procrastination from my schoolwork. I readily, I definitely experienced a lot of anxiety during my seminary days, for
Mm,
a number of different reasons, and it's tough to know if my pornography use was uh, symptomatic, causative, or both.
sure.
Probably both. Probably both, because I know that I mean, it is a stress relief, but it was definitely something I would use to procrastinate when it was time to either study or if I, had paper to write or whatever like that. That's typically something that would come up. I think if I had times of not feeling loved or included, it didn't happen in my family amongst my parents. It happened more readily. This didn't coincide with my pornography use because it was before, but I often felt that I didn't feel close with everybody in grade school, or even in high school sometimes. So I definitely had experiences of not feeling as loved or as included as I would have liked.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
even though I can't say that I didn't feel that way during the seminary days, there's a certain woundedness, I guess, that comes with that. Um, so I think there's that. My relationship with my wife was my only relationship ever, and I think that I, I probably experienced some feelings about that, feeling some type of way about that, like during high school, when you hear
Sure.
like that a lot of your friends and a lot of the people have girlfriends, but not me. Why not? So that probably had some kind of impact on me, even if it didn't coincide with the time that I was using. Um, So that's really a big one. I think probably my conflicted desire for, I want to be a priest, but I still want a woman to love me, and to have some kind of experience in that regard. Probably had an influence on my pornography use too. So I don't know exactly maybe how to pinpoint here was my like deep woundedness or what have you, as much
Sure.
as,
Sure.
but also too, I mean, I think it's established that there is addiction. I'm not diagnosing myself here, but I was reading an article about this from a well-known psychologist, Dr. Peter Klepenis, that there is addiction that comes from woundedness, and then there's addiction that comes from opportunity, an addiction that comes from, and then that can actually lead to woundedness. So what I would have to say too is that once I kind of not just realized it was accessible, but realized how I felt. I mean, there was that too. Um, and so, I think that there was just a lot of things going on there. And then, that's as much as I've really been able to kind of dig up. So I wouldn't say it came from this big sense of woundedness. I would say it came from a lot of opportunity, so to speak. And I would say that it's, I don't really know how to explain how it really got a hold on me. But what I can say is I knew from the beginning that it was wrong, but then the first time I saw it, it was like, oh yeah, this is wrong, right? Like I knew it, and I don't say that I was trying to rationalize it, but it was a deep down sense of like I felt it was wrong, but also it was jarring and confusing.
I think it's particularly confusing because it is actually a good, right? In not pornography, but sex.
Right.
So like there's a good desire there, and what you're seeing is a misproper use of it.
Right.
And so your brain's like, well, wait, no, that's not right. But also it's kind of attractive and it feels good in a way that I could see where that confusion would come in.
Yep, absolutely.
God created us as sexual beings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Period. He did not create us to crave alcohol, to crave drugs, to crave, video games, whatever, but he did create us and wire us to crave sex.
Yeah.
But in the proper ordered desire. The enemy disorders that desire, perverts it because of what it represents as far as co-creating life, with God, and the whole thing just turned upside down, and that's where we go.
Yeah, exactly. And we're, as humans, we find a way to access our fallen desires, right? Our desire for sexual pleasure is good, but now, okay. And now you have the internet, right? I mean, this isn't the way you accessed it before, but now this is a particular time, and now so we can get it like that. And I mean, you guys know well and how it impacts the brain, right? So I think it definitely impact my brain. And I would say, from when I first kind of came across this as right before being a senior in high school, it had an impact on my academic performance going into high school, college.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I failed or got bad grades or anything, but it was different. It was different.
Yeah.
It made my schoolwork more difficult. It wasn't as efficient. My thinking changed. My work ethic academically changed. So it has when they say it has a real impact on the brain, or even that it makes you dumber.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't call myself dumb, but I would attest to it.
No, it's true. Yeah, we have a whole chapter in our program on your brain on porn and what all of those things that you just mentioned. Yep. Absolutely true. And obviously Covenant Eyes is very familiar with that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely. So I mean, so we even need to find a way to make education about this known in schools. I realized that was kind of a funny way, like, oh, we need to use schools to educate about this. Like, oh, isn't that what schools are for? But I'm saying teachers need to be aware of the impact of this. School administrators need to be aware of the impact of this. Students and their parents need to be aware of the impact of this. If you can have a school assembly about DARE, you should probably, or even one of the internships I did, good for them. Right. They did a school assembly about sexting. You can do a school assembly about pornography, and you should, either for the parents,
although I will say,
or both.
Yeah, I will say, and I don't know if that's ever a space that we get a lot of questions about how to help people in that age range, minors, and we're always a little bit wary of the best way to do that because we really think things should go through the parents, but. There's got to be a right way to do it, because I had that in high school too. We had an assembly about sexting, and it was like, I can pretty much guarantee back then I remember thinking, and I wasn't involved in this within high school. I wasn't the type of thing that I did, but I could tell just from the people that I knew and everything, it was not effective. I don't think it made an impact at all. And now maybe other places have done it better. But and at the time, it was an older gentleman who I think may have even brought in a police officer who tried to talk about it from like the legal side of it and try and make it a lot more scary, and like something about it was very out of touch. The gentleman giving the presentation, and it's like the kids are like, okay, whatever, thanks. And then they're going to do what they want. So I absolutely agree. It should be something that, like, if you're going to do this, you should be able to do this. But man, high school especially is hard. You got to get through to kids in a certain way.
Yeah, I taught high school, so I get it.
Yeah. You get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did teach them about this, about pornography and the issues. I mean, but like I said about seminaries, the same is true in any other like educational context. Like one class period, and that's what it was. It was one. We had one class period. I would say that I could dedicate to this, and that was it. Maybe one of the years I had two. But and I knew a fair amount, and I was in my sobriety at that point, but I didn't know nearly as much as I know now working for it, of course. But
Sure.
the reality is this affects kids' academic and adults' academic intellectual abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're getting close to time, but one more thing that I kind of wanted to chat about was, is there anything in particular? So you've worked at Covenant Eyes for a little while now. Anything in particular that you've learned through that role that relates to all of this? Anything unique that you were surprised by?
That's a great question. I don't know if it is a surprise or if it is a maybe just slight disappointment. Maybe more the latter. I guess I can't say I'm surprised that there is some resistance in some places to speaking about this more publicly at church, at mass, at the pulpit. It's not necessarily surprising is that it wouldn't coincide with my experience or what I would guess, but it is surprising in the sense of, because this comes up in the confessional so often, you think there would be like, oh yeah, we need to say something publicly about this, or it's worth part of a homily. So it's surprising in the, not necessarily the jolting sense, but in the, well, this doesn't this doesn't line up, this doesn't follow sense, if what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess
so
it's,
when you're talking, just to clarify, when you're talking about like when you, as part of your role specifically, maybe you're reaching out to Catholic churches or in the Catholic space to try and encourage ways to talk about pornography, talk about the harms of pornography, talk about Covenant Eyes as a tool in that space, and you're finding resistance of people not wanting to talk about it publicly.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I have to correct and say, I think the resistance is more just like not responding to my email or not calling me back. I don't really get a whole lot of people who are like, yeah, I don't want to do this. But what I might get is a diocesan director who would say, I don't know if I like this. A family life director or an evangelization director who would say, I like this. A number of our priests like it. Some of them won't want to do it. Some version of that, like not a total participation. Either they don't feel skilled enough, they don't, want to upset the parents and set them up for the conversation that they're supposed to be setting them up for.
We hear that a lot.
I don't. Here's an interesting one. The thought that warning people, if kids overhear it, the thought that could be the thing that steals their innocence. I thought that's kind of surprising, because I guess I'm not inclined to think that merely hearing, I can understand where, telling a young person that, oh yeah, this kind of thing happens, in a way they become a little less innocent, but I would think it's much worse to leave them unprotected, potentially exposed. Here's a phone. They come across it. Parents had no idea. Now their innocence is gone. But at the very least, if they're merely hearing about it for the purpose of being protected and informed, and the parents saying, hey, we're going to set up these guardrails, but if you find this outside, you need to tell me, their innocence is still very much intact. And we have to do the same thing about things like stranger danger and what have you. So, now there's just more things to warn about. So I guess that was a little surprising too, but I think that it's very fulfilling work. And one of the things I've reflected on too is I think God, and maybe you feel this way too, Dan. You ever feel like God is giving you the opportunity to make reparation, so to speak, for our time kind of mired in this, and now we get to pay it forward. It really is a grace in that way, an amazing grace, I would say.
And I think for myself, I kind of make the comment too, to a lot of times that especially those that have, seen my testimony, know more of my whole history, that God has forgiven me for all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the scripture, this is which man loves more, the one that's forgiven 5 days wages, or the one that's forgiven 100 days wages? I've been forgiven 1,000,000 days wages.
Mm.
And I can't just say, oh, thanks a lot, and go on about my way. Can't do it.
Yeah.
My life has to be changed to that person that forgave me.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to.
Exactly. Yeah. And if I could elaborate on this, the surprise part, just one more thing. When part of our Safe Haven Sunday program is getting parishes and dioceses to distribute some of our parenting booklets. Actually, the content in some of the parenting booklets surprised me in a good way, and it made me feel empowered as a parent to learn things like, for example, here's just one little tip that they give. When your kid scores 20 points in the basketball game, that hits with me because I was a basketball player. It is better to praise them not merely for their accomplishment, but for their effort. Why?
Yeah.
Because when they score 0 points the next game and turn the ball over and whatever, you as a parent have the opportunity to instill in them that their value in your eyes, and therefore in God's eyes, is not relying on their accomplishment or their achievement, right, but instead on their inherent dignity as God's son or daughter. If you can parent that, and that's just one tip of many that parents can use to help their kids be in right relationship with God and see God through them, but also see that that pleasing their parents isn't the ultimate thing, because I think a lot of us can, at some deep subconscious level, fall subject to that. It's that we're God's children that are on loan to our parents in a way, but we are God's children. And so those things were very surprising and insightful too. Like, I really never thought of that, but I'm glad I'm hearing it now while my daughter's only 3. So
yeah.
And that's exactly the philosophies that we're putting into another program.
Yeah, exactly.
So
for parents. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's exactly I can't remember where I heard this, but the concept that the best concept for parenting is to be an example of what the relationship between you and your child, an example of what that relationship should look like between them and either God the Father or you can say Mary as mother. So if you're a mom or a dad, and we in our Christian life have a father and we have a designated mother.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, I think, in my experience, in my personal experience, and other people I've seen in groups I've been in and programs that I've done, and a lot of people struggle with, because of their woundedness, it's like, I'm really struggling in my prayer life because I can't relate to God as Father. I can't trust him this way, or I can't, whatever it may be. And then the same thing when they're trying to approach Mary and really understand her as a mother and a nurturing mother and what that means and what that relationship can look like, because they have wounds and damages with their mother. And I think a lot of it too is a really key thing that you touched on that I really like is a lot of people struggle with the concept of like, I have to be perfect in order to go back to church, or I have to be perfect in order to go to confession, or I have to be, all of those lies. But that can kind of come from like the way we grow up. It's like, well, we are built on like, oh, did you make the basket or not? Did you score or did you not? And I think it's a perfect example. If you're praising your children for effort more than their accomplishments, that really is kind of how the Christian life works. Like, God will doesn't care if you are doing grand things, right? He will do grand things through you if you let him. But all he cares about is that you keep trying. He doesn't care how many times you fail. He doesn't care how many times you sin, how many times you reject him, how many times you're not perfect. All he cares about is that you keep trying, that every time you keep returning to him. It's about the effort, really, more than anything else. And as long as you're open, God will do so much with that. So I love teaching that to your children, then can translate to them, like you said, almost like on loan, when they are able to relate and have a relationship with their true father and mother in heaven. And it's a much easier transition if that's there. That's really cool. I like that.
Well, and if you as parents can instill that's how you approach them, the world is still going to tell them that they need to accomplish in order to have value. Yes, and I got that sense from, not always getting along with everybody at school as well as I would have liked to. I still deeply got the sense that I needed to achieve in order to have some value. And I got that from things like basketball or sports or whatever. But at some level, working hard at those things was an attempt to, have some value in the eyes of people who I wanted to be my friends. But my parents continue to be a source of consolation and a great relationship with them. And I think, that's they can model God in that way too, right? That even in a world that wants you to achieve and only values you for your achievement, God is still there and sees much more, right? So even if you can't, as parents, fully protect your children from that lie, you can still be a model of God's love for them in that way, that when they still feel that from outside the home and apart from God and you as parents are still there for them and love them despite how the world might be treating them in light of their accomplishments or lack of.
I think for perspective, the number one thing of all the men and women that I've counseled or consulted with, the number one wound that drives their behaviors is, I need to be perfect to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's all of this falls under that.
Yep.
And that's what we have to dissolve as parents is, no, you are loved, period, by us and by God.
Yep. And then, if you can find yourself if we can be those kinds of friends, those kinds of brothers, those kinds of fellow church goers, then the world becomes an even better place, as does the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think we're about time for our episode today. Last thing, actually, do you have any words of encouragement for those who are in recovery at this time?
Yes, I do. I applaud you for your willingness to recognize that that pornography or whatever sexual sin you might be falling into is in fact a sin, a problem, and you want to make your life better. Good for you. We're here for you. We love you. God loves you. You already feel a lot of shame. You already believe a lot of lies about yourself. I hope you're able to renounce that. I hope you're able to renounce the shame and those lies. But know that we're here for you at Road to Purity. We're here for you at Covenant Eyes. Even if you can't afford the subscription, we got a lot of free information, a lot of free content, our podcast, our articles, our blog, our YouTube channel. But know this, you are loved, you are God's son or daughter, and keep up the fight. It's going to take time. But also don't forget to take stock of what it would cost you to not set it aside. I've been where you are, but I was able to, I was blessed by the shocking realization that if I keep doing this, I won't have a marriage, or my marriage will end. And that was enough. That won't always be enough, but it's there. So, keep up the good work, keep up the fight, and God bless you, and know of our prayers.
Awesome. Very true.
Bless.
Thank you so much, Theo. Again, Theo McManigle, Catholic Outreach Specialist at Covenant Eyes. If anybody wants to try out Covenant Eyes, you can sign up using code ROAD, 2 Purity, and you'll get 1 month free off of your Covenant Eyes subscription. So if you want to give it a chance, and go to covenanteyes.com. Again, that's code ROAD to Purity with the 2 instead of TO. So give that a try. Otherwise, we'll put all of the links down below for Covenant Eyes in the description, as well as some information to get in contact with Theo. But yeah, thanks so much, Theo, for joining us. We really appreciate having you on, and we hope to do this again.
I would love to do this again. Dan and David, it's great to be with you guys today. This was a fantastic conversation. I look forward to when it drops, and I look forward to being connected with you guys. Thanks for all you're doing for the Catholic Church, for priests, for parents, for seminarians, and for everyone in between. It's an honor to be connected.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you have any topics you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, shoot us an email at ask@roadtopurity.com. Don't forget to visit our website, roadtopurity.com, for all our free resources and affordable programs to help men and women who are looking to grow in sexual purity. We rely on donations to keep doing what we do, so if you'd like to support Road to Purity, please consider donating at roadtopurity.com/donate. Thanks again for your support. God bless.